Welcome to Defenders of Craft, a Craft Pride podcast, bringing you the heart and soul of beer culture in Austin and around Texas. So we're live here at Blue Owl Brewing here on East Cesar Chavez, sitting down with Jeff Young, and we just wanted to have a chance to talk to you a little bit about this sour party that we're doing. You're bringing 2 beers to the party, not just one, so you're above the curve. What do you have to say about the beers that you're bringing?
Well, with the 2 that we have there, Little Goza and Wild Animal, I think they show a little bit of diversity from what we do here. You know, so obviously the classic style Little Goza is a Goza that's the salty wheat, kind of a mild sourness. But the thing that we love about this beer is that we always use some sort of fresh fruit or herb in it. And in this one, we did smoked limes that we teamed up with the guys over at Kamuri Tatsuya and smoked some limes, put them in this beer.
And that's what we have right here in front of us, right?
And that's the one we're starting with.
This is fantastic. I've never had a smoked lime flavor. I've had smoked salsas with lime squirt in it, but a smoked lime, that's an interesting flavor on the palate.
Yeah, it kind of came from the idea of the whole Little Goza line comes from the idea of drinking cocktails during the summer and what kind of cocktails do we like. So the first one was the Thai basil and orange zest, and that was definitely reminiscent of some of the gin-based cocktails that have basil in them. And then this one is, I'm a big fan of mezcal, and we kind of dabbled with this last year, had a little bit of smoky limes, put it in a Goza in a real small batch, and kind of thought it tasted a bit reminiscent of mezcal, and we thought that was super cool and refreshing, but had some depth and complexity to it, so we ran with it this year.
Yeah, I gotta say, I feel refreshed.
Yeah.
It's real good. When you say that you smoked the limes, did you smoke them whole? Did you cut them in half? How did all that work to get the flavor of that smoked lime, but to avoid the pith? I would think that if you cooked the pith, it would kind of give you some negative flavor components.
Yeah, what we did was really we just cut them in half, and then Kamuri had a really large, kind of barbecue brisket pit type grill that was used for smoking all the stuff that they do there. So then we just lined up some 250 pounds of half limes and smoked them that way, and then just added them whole, the halves of them, added them whole to the beer itself and let it kind of soak that way. And what we found was, because you're not exposing all of the pith to the beer, it gives you some of that, as well as some of the meat inside with the smoke and the juices. So it really added a neat kind of level of complexity to the lime. It's not overbearingly smoky. I'm not a huge fan of smoked beers, but this is
really palatable.
Yeah, it's interesting how it kind of develops. It does.
Instead of just why did they do this to perfectly good beer?
Right. No, exactly. Well said.
Yeah, I really like the smoke from the fruit character instead of the smoke from the malt, because when you smoke malt, any little bit of it gets that burnt taste, and this does have that very reminiscent mezcal kind of flavor. It seems like it should have cubes in it.
Yeah,
cubes in a straw. Maybe
right.
a little
I feel
umbrella.
like it really pairs interestingly with your sour mash that the in-house standard kind of Blue Owl tang you're expecting to see out of the Little Goza, for instance.
Yeah,
it doesn't have quite the same character with the lime added.
Yeah, it does kind of change it. When we first started, I really didn't have any intention of brewing a Goza, just because it was such a standard thing, almost kind of passé to do if you're a wort souring brewery. But we just happened to do a collaboration, and they wanted to do a Goza, and after we tasted it, we're just we really like how the Goza is coming out of our process, and adding that little twang to it, and keeping it really clean. And then, of course, with the lime, it seems to make sense.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's just a Texas thing, but it just seems like Goza has really taken off these last year. Like last year, it kind of started, in this year, I feel like everybody's got a Goza. Shiner has a lime and salt beer. They don't dare call it a Goza, but I mean you can see where they're going. Have you noticed that trend outside of like your peers and like the local community?
Yeah, absolutely. Goza, I think, is one of those standard kind of wort soured beers that people are making across the nation that are almost like a prerequisite for this kind of thing. And, like I was saying, we weren't interested in brewing one because we kind of wanted to be different and we wanted to show, a little bit of what else you can do as opposed to just immediately falling in line with what everybody's doing with these wort soured methods. And I like the style, but I also think kind of has brand recognition now. Goza, the word Goza, is familiar and in the craft brewer, even casual craft beer drinker in their vocabulary. And that's something we even avoided, maybe to our detriment. And actually, I was talking to JT and Brandy years ago when they first started Craft Pride and we released Little Boss there. They're like, you would sell way more of this if you called it a Berliner Weiss. I was like, you're not wrong. You probably would sell more of it because of the recognition of the name, but we really just kind of want to fundamentally, to us, it wasn't that. It didn't come from that, even though it's very similar to that. So when it comes to the Goza, we ran with the style. It is a Goza. It does have salty wheat. But then, of course, as the subheader of this beer, it's Little Goza salty sour wheat. So I think it kind of gives people an idea what they're getting into, even if they don't fully understand Goza or what that means.
I do think that Goza is an easier term for people to have latched onto than Berliner Weiss, though.
You're probably right.
Just
yeah.
in my experience with beer drinkers, they still don't have a good grasp on Berliners at this point. But Gozas, yeah, all day long.
Yeah.
That's so funny. Have you ever been hanging out with anybody who pronounces it the proper German way? It's Goza. Like, or something, like it's like a really weird one because it's like from the specific river that the town in North Germany that style comes from, and so that's always like a fun like pinky up thing whenever you're hanging out and someone's like trying to pronounce styles like in the accurate tongue, and it's like, come on, man, we get it.
Yeah, it's like,
we
man,
get it. You like beer.
I know that the street should be called Guadalupe, but if I said it like that, you wouldn't know I was talking about the street. You know?
Manchac, Texas. So the other beer that we're going to have is the Wild Animal.
Yes.
And which one are we actually going to have at the party here coming up? The first one you had.
Okay, yeah. So we've done two versions of Wild Animal, and let me step back a little bit and say that our Wild program is kind of a subset of what we do here. Everything that we do goes through our sour mashing process, and from there, it could be a clean fermentation and have like a tart IPA kind of thing, but naturally there's many other methods that we can use to add complexity or change up the beer. And in our Wild series, that's when we sour mash the wort and then either ferment it clean and then put it in barrels, or put it in barrels immediately and let it ferment with like a mixed wild culture. So Wild Animal is just that. It's spirit animal that has gone through the process of a secondary kind of fermentation or aging on Brettanomyces and other mixed cultures.
Yeah, I'm really excited about this beer because basically what you've just described is like just awesome as far as I'm
a bunch of good words.
Like, yeah. I love spirit animal. I love barrel aged stuff. Put Brett in it. It's probably going to be great.
Yeah. Yeah,
all of the above.
It's all those things kind of combined, but still staying true to what we try to do, and that's make these beers approachable, accessible, and it's not going to be this really like funkified barnyardy kind of thing. It's a spirit ale. It's a sour pale ale. And it's going to have the elements of a pale ale in there. And then with Wild Boss, of course, Wild Animal, of course, it gets some dry hops and kind of continues down that line of a pale ale. But this is what happens when you put kind of a classic American pale ale through this process. And it makes sense. It has the complexity there, but it's still drinkable and approachable. So I can grab some of that.
Yeah, I was actually really interested in.
Yeah. We're saving the other one for another event we're doing in August called for all mixed cultures.
Nice. We may even, I'm purposefully downplaying a lot of the mixed culture, barrel-aged funky things because we're still trying to establish ourselves as kind of the clean sour, but we're doing this stuff in anticipation of having kind of a brand spin-off where all of our clean sours turn Brett Funky Sour.
Oh, so like having like a whole separate facility, so you don't have to worry about infecting your brewery here.
Something like that.
Yeah, I mean that makes a lot of sense.
We're still working out the details, and this is like small scale dabbling, so that once we go full on, we'll already have some stuff under our belt.
Some experience of like how it's going to work and a workflow to like know what to do.
Yeah, exactly.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, so that's part of our little secret.
What's the time frame on that? Like a year or so?
I would hope next year we start realizing some of this stuff a little bit more. There's a lot of other factors going on with other facility and needing storage space, but we're trying to let it also organically happen to where
makes sense.
Yeah, like it starts with the good beers that we like that are coming out, and then like, okay, this makes sense now to be this completely different unit, but similar.
Is that where you've been kind of playing around with the bottle releases? Are those going to be like the format that we'll see for it, or are you going to kind of go the similar format with like cans and whatnot?
I really like cans. We've done a whole line of bottles, and now that we've done that line, it's been okay, but it just doesn't feel right. So
yeah, that thought alone, just like that right there, like traditional like style wild ales in cans, that's a mind blower. Just like to be able to take like a barrel-aged Brett beer to the river and drink it out of a can. That's insane.
And I think it is a bit of a paradigm shift, and we don't want to force the idea and for it to be weird. But, as we're playing around with Wild Animal and Wild Boss, it's starting to make more sense because these beers are still affordable in the way that we do them. Sure, it takes more time to age them in barrels, but, we got time.
I could definitely drink 6 of these.
Yeah,
why
I
not
think
take more with you?
And that kind of goes back also to, how unapproachable some really funky beers can be. And they can be delicious. Of course, I'm not saying they're not delicious, but not necessarily something you take down tubing with.
Yeah, imagine how much of a pain in the ass it'd be. Like you're at the park, you pop the cork on this 750 milliliter, or you pop the cap, and there's a cork underneath. And you're like, God damn it, I'm just trying to drink a beer.
Well,
there you go.
There you go.
So this is Wild Animal, and this is with the Kohatu hop. Where's that come from?
The Kohatu hop itself,
Yeah.
New Zealand. So this year we kind of have a theme for each year. This year has been a hop forward theme, so sourness and hops. And you've seen it been expressed as like our sour New England IPA collaboration with Black Star Co-op, our smash beer Smash, which was the sour mash single malt and single hop that used Mosaic and Blacklands malt, and now we're kind of in our Wild series using New Zealand or New Zealand hops. In different ways to take advantage of their limey tropicalness that you don't get with classic American hops or the modern newer American hops like Citra, or of course any of the continental hops. So the New Zealand hops, I think, play really well with this balance between kind of herbal, fruity, funky, and of course most of them have this really strong underlying limey kind of character to them.
You're really speaking a language that makes my heart beat. Like anything lime, I'm a sucker for. And I got to say, this is an interesting experience. I can't say that I've had another beer with a similar flavor profile of what I'm getting here. That, like you said, that kind of like bright citrus character, also with like a deeper kind of funk that like really blends well together that I would have not thought to put together. Like with a straight sour mash without the barrel aging, that makes sense, and like that's kind of what I'm expecting. But with the added body and complexity, it kind of takes it to a whole new level, and I really like that.
Yeah, something that we're experimenting with, and I think it's not completely novel, but it is something that, because we focus on wort soured beers, sour mash beers, once we go into barrels or do some sort of secondary fermentation or aging with different bacteria and wild yeast, the wort or beer going in has a different composition than if it wasn't wort soured or wort sour mashed. And what I'm saying there is that because there's this acidity already in place before it goes into the Brett stage, it changes what happens during the Brett stage. And what we've found is that you introduce a high level of acidity immediately into the Brett, and that Brett esterifies it or makes it extra fruity. So something that we've found is, instead of kind of a traditional aging with Brett that takes a long time and really gets more the phenolic, spicy, funky kind of thing, we get immediate and pretty intense fruity character out of these barrels. And that works really well. You know, we're making it work well with Spirit Animal by combining that with the New Zealand hops. And then we also do Wild Boss. Yes. And then Wild Boss, you know, that's a really light beer. That one's really cool when that comes out being extra esterified from the Brettanomyces, because it just adds all this complexity of fruitiness in there, this subtle like strawberry and you know, mango kind of thing, and they're still like approachable sour barrel aged Brett beers, something you could have in a 6-pack, and it makes sense.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. Like, I know that while there may not be immediate plans to put beers like that into the market in package, how long before we can buy Wild Animal in package?
Well, now, I guess. We do have some, we did a really small limited run of Wild Animal 6-packs in cans.
Nice.
So just out of the tap room right now, they're just kind of sticker labeled cans. So it's kind of our first attempt at just doing this small, seeing how it works, and then, you know, seeing what sticks, and then building up from there.
I heard about this strawberry beer that you guys have going. Is that what, Straw Barrel Fields Forever, something like that?
Yeah, that was a fun one. A clever name too. We actually, so Jacob, who's one of the brewers here, Cellarman, he really, really likes using fresh fruits in season, getting a relationship with the farmer. So he convinced me to go out and pick strawberries with him one afternoon, and it was super cool. And, you know, we couldn't pick too many strawberries, but the amount that we got a couple different varietals, and then juiced them and added them to a Wild Boss. Like I was saying, is that light kind of base, and then that strawberry just took it and kind of took over and had this complexity and depth, but also a focused flavor. Like, it was the strawberry in a very natural way.
it seems like almost like the ingredients kind of combine around the fruit to be like, here, this is what we got going on.
Yeah.
Let's all promote this. Let's all enhance these flavors. That's a pretty cool process.
You said exactly right, and that is what we try to focus on with every fruited beer that we make. You know, I was saying earlier, we didn't really want to make gozas coming out of the gate because everyone's doing that. We also didn't want to like too heavily do fruited sours. People love fruited sours, and I do too. But we didn't want to fall into immediately the track that, you know, here's your fruited sour and here's your goza. We're Blue Owl. We wanted to try some different things and then kind of sprinkle in some of these other things that like fruit and gozas that work really well, but not just be the brewery that just does those. So we're doing some kind of small scale tap room and limited release beers that do use fruit, and maybe in anticipation of next year possibly being a little more fruit heavy. I think it's about time. But what you were saying about kind of combining the flavors around the fruit, when we do Dapper Devil or Professor Black, that's what we think about. It's not how can we have this beer that has a fruit flavor in it. It's how can we combine these flavors around a central point that is maybe that fruit or maybe one of the other flavors in the beer.
So what you're saying is next year's theme is fruit?
It might be. We're dabbling. Yeah, this year's theme has been hops. Next year, I guess I did say that. So yes, I think we are going to focus a little more on fruit next year.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for sitting down with us, making some time out of your busy day, showing us around and these delicious beers.
Absolutely.
We're excited to pour them Saturday, June 23rd. We're going to be ready at noon, so come thirsty, folks.